Hello and welcome to episode 142 of the Elevate Your Running podcast. Today I'm talking all about your complete marathon recovery guide. And you may or may not have noticed that over the last 4 to 6 weeks, this podcast has really leaned into the marathon and step by step kind of went through training, things I would do differently or things that I learned in my first marathon training cycle to help you up level yours. Talked about chunking the marathon distance, talked about peak week and everything that kind of comes with that bigger week or two in training. There's also a taper episode in your race day checklist that involves race week and race weekend, race morning, all those things. And this is going to be a great episode on what to do after you cross the finish line, after you cross 26.2 miles, and how do you recover as quickly as you can? Because at the end of the day, running 26.2 miles is tough and your body goes through a lot of stress, whether you feel it or not. And being able to do some things I would like to call them like low hanging fruit very quickly after you cross the finish line is really going to set you up for success on how you feel in the weeks after the race. And if you're like me, you may have your 2025 race calendar already planned. And I know when I cross the line at Indianapolis this fall, I will want to do everything that I share with you today, but also, I really want to recover as fast as I can so I can get back into it in a healthy amount of time where I really honor my body, honor my mind, which is a big piece to it, but also getting back into those workouts to kind of create some magic in 2025. So, before we get into this week's episode, I'd love to share an elevated moment. I'm recording this episode just a day or two before Boulderthon race weekend begins. And Boulderthon is such a cool race that Boulder, Colorado gets to welcome other runners into their running community, and we get to celebrate the gift of running. We have this incredible 10K race on Memorial Day. It's called Boulder Boulder, and this is such a fun run. It a lot of people, like thousands and thousands and thousands of people, come into town for Memorial Day, which is in May, the last Monday in May, and we run this 10K for fun. Some of us train for it. Some of us just want to go hard and see where we blow up. This course is difficult. There's a lot of long inclines with hills, and there's a very infamous hill at the very end. And it's a tough course. And it's always really fun to kind of, as an athlete and as a coach, I'm like training for this run. I coach other athletes who want to run this run for fun or kind of go after it. And it's like a kickoff to summer. And we didn't have anything to kind of symbolize the end of summer, maybe the transition into fall, until Boulderthon came around, which was we're in their third year. And it's been so much fun this summer working with Boulderthon. I got to be an ambassador for this race. And I have to say, out of all the ambassadorships that I've had, I think I've had like 4 or 5 at this point, race ambassadorships. Like, this by far has been the best experience I've ever had. Boulderthon has really welcomed me into their family, and it's been so fun getting to know them and highlighting parts of race weekend that I think are going to lift up so many people and give the opportunity for training and lift athletes high, and let's all come together and celebrate the love of running, which we get to do on Boulderthon race weekend. So there's so much fun that's taking place over the weekend. There are shakeout runs every day starting Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then of course, Sunday morning the Elevate team has our shakeout, which I know is going to be great. And there are pro runners coming in and talking to the running community about different aspects of this race. And there's a lot of different events around town at Lululemon, at Fleet Feet, that are going to just lift everyone high and kind of give such a feel good experience. And it's kind of like a big hug that I think we all need from time to time, especially if we're training hard. And whether we're going in to race this or we're going in to run it for fun, I think this is a weekend that we all need, want, and deserve. So I'm really excited about it. And I'm coaching quite a few athletes over the weekend. I have an athlete in particular flying in from Ohio, and Tamana and I get to run the 10K together. So I'm going to try and document that as best as I can and highlight that on social to kind of give everyone who wasn't able to come this weekend a chance to kind of get a glimpse into Boulderthon. I know it ran up pretty tight against Chicago. And for anyone who was running Chicago that I was at least coaching and they were going after a pretty big goal at Chicago, I suggested that they don't attend just for the sake of their taper. So hopefully next year we can make this weekend even bigger, better, and all the things. But I'm really, really excited about this weekend. And it's such a big testament to the running community and how much fun that we can have while we're training. I'm a big, big believer that we can still work hard in training and have fun at the same time. And I'm working I wouldn't say I'm working hard, but I'm definitely trying to highlight that as best as I can in my own training to show that, yes, it is possible. Yes, there are going to be days where you get to work hard. I've had a lot of hard, tough workouts. And after those intervals are over or after the run's over, my teammates are seeing me laughing and having fun and really just grasping into all the good that comes from training and running. And I think it's a really big piece to running well and running relaxed and running your potential. So with that, let's get into this week's episode. So I want to talk about all the ways that you can recover hard after the marathon. And I want you to think about it actually while you're in the marathon. So this might be a little daunting to anyone who is going into a 26.2, but I think it's really important that you start thinking about that recovery process as you're running. And what I mean by that is like, no, you don't need to be thinking about doing mobility or Epsom salt baths or saunas or cold plunges while you're running, but I want you to be fueling your body as best as possible. And this is something that starts on day one of training. And it's something that you can work throughout the training cycle. What works, what doesn't work, how many gels are you taking, how many calories are you taking in per hour, what does your long run breakfast look like or your pre-marathon breakfast look like, because this is all going to impact how you feel after the race. And it's something I've been working on a lot during this training cycle. I feel like a brand new runner in some ways because I was previously using spring energy gels. And what we come to find out is that there's not really anything in those gels. And that was really disappointing to find out. And thinking about what gels do I want to take in training? How do I want to show up in training? How is this actually going to work? Because I thought I was taking all these calories and carbohydrates in training. Turns out I wasn't. So how's my stomach going to respond to that? So training gets to be that point in that process of discovering that. And by marathon day and by race day, you should have that dialed in. And sticking to the plan as best as you can is going to help you be successful in recovering after you cross the finish line. So this could look like following your fueling and hydration and sodium plan to a T. It can be very difficult because there's a lot of moving pieces to 26.2. There's a lot of moving pieces to race day, and it's never going to go according to plan. But hopefully you've practiced enough in training to know what works, what doesn't work. And when things maybe start to go sideways, you know how to get back on track with your fueling. So oftentimes I'll hear athletes say, I didn't want to take that last gel, or I decided to space my gels out, or I decided not to take salt tabs, or I wasn't drinking enough and I realized I wasn't drinking enough until it was too late. But the more we can be intentional with our plan, and maybe that's for sake of ease in this conversation, let's say we're taking a gel at every 5K, you're taking a sip of water with electrolytes at every mile, and then let's say you're also taking a salt tab at every 5K. So it's a gel salt tab every 5K, which is marked on the course, and then a drink of water every time your smartwatch goes off to log a mile. I think that's a great strategy. Oftentimes we get into the marathon and we're not hungry, we're not thirsty, we are all nerves. Maybe a little bit of excitement, but mostly nerves until we settle down. And it's really important to stick with the plan, because the more we can fuel during this race, the less glycogen depletion we have. And that's going to be essential in finishing a strong race, and also how we recover after the marathon, because fueling after the marathon is going to be the second most important thing. And I don't know about you, but when I finish a marathon, I'm not hungry. I don't want anything. I probably I chug like 2 bottles of water and then I'm like, I need some iced coffee, and definitely celebrate with a margarita, but I'm not thinking about food. And that is going to be one of the biggest pieces on how you can recover fast after the marathon, is getting something in your system. So you not only have practiced this and had started the recovery process with fueling, by fueling well and fueling often, gel well, gel often, as I like to say to my athletes throughout the 26.2, but then, of course, as quickly as you can after the marathon. And maybe it's a tip from what we do in training, which after those, remember those like long summer long runs, those hot summer long runs where you finish your 3 hour long run and you want nothing to do with food? That's kind of how you feel after the marathon. And what we can do is supplement with liquids. So smoothies, protein drinks, yogurt, things that are really easy to go down, that you don't have to really think about eating. I remember after my first Boston Marathon, I wanted to go out to get a margarita for sure. That was like in the game plan, like well in advance. But I also ordered food. And I remember sitting with this like burrito bowl in front of my face. And I think I took like 3 bites because I just felt so sick to my stomach, which is normal. I ran a warm marathon. I was very, very dehydrated. And that nausea and that nauseous feeling comes from being dehydrated or underfueled or underfueled. So that makes sense, right? But if you can take in some liquids with calories, you're setting yourself up for success for your body to start that recovery process. So fuel and hydration is the number one thing on what to focus on when you finish your race. And the hydration is going to be, making sure that you're drinking water, maybe taking in more electrolytes. Like I say, I chug 2 bottles of water. I'm not joking. Like I am a heavy drinker. Even in like the marathon itself, I'm probably taking in like close to 60 ounces of water throughout the 3 hours. It's just something that I do, and it's not something that I like, but it is something that I just have to figure out and deal with. And then I also drink a lot after the race. So the races are usually really great at handing out bottles of water. Take one, take two, like I do, and drink them as quickly as you can to start that recovery process. It's huge. You're going to feel so much better later in the day. And then, of course, those coming weeks as you go through the full recovery process. All right, the next thing that you can do to recover hard after running 26.2, I think it's really important to lean into celebrating. Now, this could be celebrating after the race, like immediately after the race. This could be celebrating with your friends, your family, maybe your teammates in the weeks to come. But I think it's really important, no matter how the race goes for you, that you take time to celebrate all the hard work that you put into it. And I think you'll feel better, because with celebrating comes joy. And with joy, it's good feelings. And if we are feeling good and happy and we're not feeling those marathon blues, and it's okay if you do, I think a lot of us do, it will help the recovery process, because you're going to be in a better place to fuel and hydrate throughout the rest of the week. You'll be in a better place to implement some of these other strategies that I talk about. And I think that that is going to be a key to your success. I think oftentimes as runners, we're very, very hard on ourselves. And even if we hit our A goal, there's always going to be something that we're not happy with. And we don't want to get too fixated on that. We really want to celebrate the race. We want to celebrate, the race kind of is the celebration to some extent, but we really want to celebrate the training cycle, all the hard work that we put in, all the wins that we created, how did we execute our process goals? I think that's a big, big, big piece to letting your mind just rest and recover after your phenomenal 26.2. Because no matter what happens out there, the 26.2 is phenomenal because it's hard. I know we don't talk about that enough, but running the marathon is definitely hard. So take time to celebrate. Take time to really be proud of everything that you've done. And something that doesn't really, I guess, lend itself into recovery, but I really like athletes to take time to journal about what worked, what didn't work, what are the wins, what are things that I could do better with. I just had an athlete run a marathon and I talked to her an hour after she finished, and she was talking through different things and things that worked and things that didn't work, and it's this is great. I mean, it was so fresh, and yet let's lean in. Okay, some things didn't work, so we get to practice on XYZ and for the next time, so we have that a bit more dialed in. And I think it's a big, big piece to letting your mind be at peace with the process, with the training cycle, and being able to move on, which is a big piece to it. Okay, so the next way that you can recover hard after the marathon is sleeping. And we all know that sleep is the number one recovery tool, but you might be thinking to yourself, sleep? I don't sleep well after the marathon. Correct. I don't think many people sleep well after the marathon, but I think it is really important to do the best that you can do with getting as much sleep as you can after the race. Typically, our adrenaline is running pretty high after the race, and it's very difficult to sleep, fall asleep, or stay asleep during specifically the night of the race. So let's say you're running the Chicago Marathon on Sunday, October 13th. The night of October 13th going into Monday, October 14th, probably going to be a very difficult time to sleep, and that's okay. But doing the best that you can do, which is going, to bed, quote unquote, early, laying down, letting your body rest, recover. Maybe you're coming back from that celebration with teammates or with your friends, with your family, and really leaning into sleeping as much as you can. And maybe that means taking, my favorite right now is the Cherry Bundy tart cherry juice with melatonin. And it has 3 grams of melatonin in it. So if you need more, maybe taking another supplement. But I'm not a doctor, so that's going to be up to you. But it is a good way to put your body at more relaxation levels or at higher relaxation levels, and give you kind of that that vibe of calming down, falling asleep, and then really trying to make sleep a priority over the next week. You'll find, I think, each day it's probably going to be a little bit better, a little bit easier to sleep. And you probably don't have training on the schedule. I really hope you don't. It's always so interesting to see people race and see people running the day or two after a marathon, and I just kind of my skin crawls because it's not serving you. It's not serving the athlete in the long run. And giving your body, giving your mind that time to recover. Sleep in if you can. Go to bed early. These are going to be great ways to set yourself up for success so that you can recover. I know in training, typically on Wednesday nights, which Wednesdays are my biggest training days, my busiest coaching day. I'm usually going from one thing to the next from 6:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And it's a day that I can't recover. I have to use nutrition and hydration to recover. And I can't even really use sleep because typically I don't sleep well on Wednesday nights. And knowing that, I try and do a really good job of sleeping well on Monday, Tuesday night, and then knowing Thursday night's usually the best amount of sleep that I can get, or the most. But what I typically notice is, depending on how much sleep or how little sleep I get Wednesday night into Thursday morning, sometimes it's been 4 or 5 hours, which doing what I do on Wednesday is like, it's not good. And I feel it in my legs. I absolutely feel it in my legs. And today, or I should say last night, from Wednesday to Thursday, I slept great. The best I've ever slept on a Wednesday night since my summer training group started. And my legs felt great this morning, and it goes hand in hand. So it would be interesting to see if you could track that too on the nights that you get great sleep. How does your body feel the next day? And then, of course, on those nights that you don't sleep as well, do you notice that in the fatigue in your legs, the soreness in your legs? Maybe your legs are heavy. Those are all indicators of like, you're not getting great sleep. So sleep is going to be huge in the recovery window, which is that week after the marathon. And then, of course, just leaning into it as much as you can until you feel like you're completely recovered. So, the next piece on how you can recover hard is movement. And I just talked about how it's like my skin crawls like seeing people run. That's right. I don't think we need to be running the week after a marathon. A lot of the athletes I coach get a full week off, and there's going to be some exceptions. Maybe it's 5 days, maybe it's 10 days. If you're running a Revel race, congratulations. You just bought yourself at least 10 days of recovery. But if you're a seasoned marathoner and you were recovering really well through the training cycle and you have a really strong race, maybe it's 5 days, something like that. But I think it's really important to still move. And it's something that I really like after I run a marathon, is making sure that I'm still getting out to walk my dog Kenzie and still creating movement. So I don't add strength training in until maybe like day 10 or so. That first strength training always has a little bit different, but that or going to reformer Pilates, it doesn't start until about day 10. But you can walk and just do light movement. I think that's really good, not just for our body to kind of work through any sort of soreness or tightness, but also for our mind and just getting that movement. Because at the end of the day, if we've been training as much as we have for a 26.2 or for another race, we probably want some sort of movement in our life. And that's okay. I think it's making sure that you honor yourself, you listen to your body. Maybe that first walk, it's the day after the marathon. You want to walk for like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And then each day you just kind of slowly build a little bit. I think that's great. Every marathon's going to be different. I think that's important to know. I've had races where I have felt like garbage walking for a few days after the race. Those are typically like the breakthrough races, the PR races, and then races that don't go as well. And maybe, I didn't run my potential. It's a bit easier to get out there and walk. And that's okay. I think it's knowing yourself, knowing your body, giving yourself grace around it. And, if you did go out and crush a 26.2, taking it very slow the first few days. But walking is great. It's low impact. It helps your brain and heart and body, I think, just radiate a little bit of joy, which is something that, is great after a race, but really any day. I think it's also important to lean into other hobbies. And this is something that, as a coach, I really want to see with my athletes. And of course, for myself, there's a lot of things I'm not doing right now because I'm training so much. And most of my free time outside of running a business and coaching athletes and training as much as I am, like there's just not, and I have a dog, and like there's just not a lot of extra time, right? So when you're in this recovery process where maybe you're not training and maybe you're taking a week or two off, there's always that reverse taper as you get back into it. So the load isn't nearly as high. You're not running long workouts. You have time. You have time to lean into maybe other hobbies that you haven't been able to get to during training. You can lean into seeing friends and family and acquaintances that you haven't been able to connect with because your priorities kind of shifted during the training cycle. And I think that's okay. I think as long as there's a good ebb and flow to your training cycle and then your off season, maybe your base phase, if there's a good ebb and flow to all of that where you have priorities kind of change in each season, I think that's really healthy. I think we really need to do that. We can't be 100% athletes every single day, and we also have to and get to make training a priority when we kind of hit that like important month or so in training where we really need to be dedicated to not just training, but the sleep and the recovery and doing all those things that are so important. So, leaning into other hobbies, seeing friends that you haven't seen, all really important. Very early on in the cycle, I knew that I was going to have to say no to people. And that's a really difficult thing for me to do. I love being, to some extent, I love being out and about, and I love getting together with people and doing all the fun things. And my job is interesting enough where it's very flexible, so I can fit that stuff in. And sometimes I fit too much in. And then I have to, shift some things around. But it was very, very early on in this marathon prep for Indy where I had to start saying to people who I wasn't running with, so basically anyone outside of my teammates and maybe like one other person, I had to say, unless I'm also exercising Kenzie or I'm on a run, I can't hang out with you right now and I'm really sorry. And, I'll definitely have more time after this race is over. Or, hey, can you come to me? Is it something that, like, if you come to me, we can go for a walk with Kenzie and it just kind of helps? And some people have been really great with that. And they understand. And those are going to be the people that you definitely want in your corner. But just know that it's going to be a season, it's going to be a short season. And then you go into new seasons and there's new opportunities to lean into different things. And maybe you're still training. And I think that's what's really cool is like you can still train after the marathon, but it's not going to take as much time. You could train speed and it could be like half the time that you're devoting to the marathon. It could be almost equal. It all kind of depends. But I think knowing that there is kind of that you get to look on the other side of it once you cross the finish line and know that you're going to have more time, I think is really important. So maybe it's joining a book club or getting back into reading or going to the movies or seeing friends and being social or traveling, which is something that I think some people do really well with during training and some people don't. I think I kind of fall on the latter side. I don't love to travel during the training cycle because I am typically running a lot every single day. And it's just a lot of mental load on top of the marathon training mental load that I have to think about where to run, how to get these workouts in. And when you're also on vacation and training, that's kind of a really tough place to be because you're on vacation. You don't want to train. You don't want to do a hard long run, right? But maybe it's scheduling that vacation after the race. I have an athlete who's running Chicago and then she's taking 2 weeks off and she's going to be gone and on vacation. And I think that's a really, really great way to set yourself up for success. I've had other athletes go on vacation like before their race. I think I talked about this on last week's episode with Coach Amber. And then they've raced and then they've had a vacation on the backside. So almost their race was like the cream filling in an Oreo, and like the Oreo cookies are like the two vacations. And it's a very difficult place to be. It's just very difficult because you're already in vacation mode. And then to try and be in race mode and then go back into vacation mode, typically what happens is you're just in vacation mode. And it's very difficult to execute the race that you want when you've already been on vacation for a few days or a week or whatever that looks like. If you have mastered this, please reach out. I'd love to talk to you on how you did that. And I'm sure it's something that some people do. It's just something I haven't seen be successful yet. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. So I think lastly, the thing that we can all do, no matter if we're running a marathon, half, 10K, 5K, mile, whether we crush our race, whether our race goes sideways, we've all had both of those experiences. And if you haven't, you will. is to be proud of your training and be really proud of yourself. This isn't going to help you recover any faster, but it is going to be something that helps your confidence. It is going to be something that does create this little bit of like a little bit or maybe a lot of joy in your heart. And it's something that, you worked really hard for. And I love hard work. I love it. I think it's pretty evident with how I live my life and training very, very hard in training and running and building Elevate, and being proud of just like what you put into it, because there's going to be good days, there's going to be okay days, there's going to be terrible days. So rule of thirds in training, that is something that happens, but being proud of how you showed up, how you overcame difficult runs or hard times, or how you shined and celebrated on bigger days and days that went well, I think is really important. It's a part of life. It's something that we all get to do, and it's something that maybe we don't do enough of. So be proud of yourself. Tell yourself good job. Pat yourself on the back. Um, Take a trip. Buy yourself something fun. Maybe it's going into another training cycle. Like, it all depends on what you want, right? But be proud of your training, your hard work. The fall race season is here, and we're going into an off season. And I think it's really important to celebrate everything you've created this year, everything you've created over the summer, all the good that you created in the fall, and knowing you're stacking bricks. You're checking the box, you're getting things done, and it's only going to propel you into a stronger 2025 if you stick with it. And that's what it's all about. Finding the wins, celebrating yourself, learning, growing, and continuing to create those stepping stones. And eventually you'll get to that place that you want to go, which is that North Star and that ultimate like end all be all, which is really exciting. So I hope this episode was one that you bookmark if you haven't run yet, if you haven't run your race yet. It's something that you can bookmark after a hard workout. Let's recover hard after the marathon. We're going to fuel and hydrate as best as we can after that race. We're going to celebrate all of our wins and all of the goodness that we created in training. We're going to focus in on sleep because that's huge. We're going to still get out there and do some light movement during race, post-race week and that recovery week. And then we're going to lean into other hobbies that fill our heart with joy and give us a really big mental and physical reset, which we all need and deserve. And then, of course, be proud of yourself, because I'm proud of you. I will see you next week. There's a great episode coming out next week, and I hope you stay tuned for that. If you're in the Denver and Boulder area, there is a group training taking place on Wednesday nights. It's a 10-week program. We're training for a 5K, and this is leading us into the holiday season. So if you're in the area, we're training on Wednesday nights. Coach Amber is taking the Boulder team. I'm still coaching the Denver team. And reach out for more details. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to see what these teams can create over the 10 weeks. Have a great week, and I'll see you again.